Hello there. Hi, Gary. How did you get
Oh,
there?
yeah. We are good to go, I think, aren't we?
We are. It is 6 o'clock on the 4th of June already, 2025.
Yeah.
And we have got a great guest lined up for you this evening. Please get your questions in. I'm sure you'll have many questions because she's a fascinating guest. Can you tell us how you found Michelle, Gary, in this vast internet?
I think it was through LinkedIn and reading her stuff and being recommended that I should read her book, Good Girl Deprogramming, and you should read her book. And then we kind of interacted on a bit across Substack. And then we had a really nice meeting on Zoom about 3 weeks ago, getting to know each other a little bit better. And you'll soon find out she's remarkable.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's such an intriguing idea, isn't it? Deprogrammer of good girls. So without further ado, I said, should we do a round of applause, or would you like to come in on a celestial cloud? I think we went for the latter. So let's press that button and bring Michelle in. Good evening to you, Michelle. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. I feel like an angel now, or a fairy godmother.
Well, we feel blessed, that's for sure. Can you give us some wishes? Is that possible?
No.
All right, let's take it. Goodbye.
What's the first rule of improv? Never say no.
Yeah.
Right. I think you will be bringing blessings.
Yeah.
And this wonderful idea, and I'll make sure your website link is on the screen so people can have a look, perhaps while we're chatting. Good Girl Deprogramming. I know Gary's got some great questions for you, and I won't be able to keep quiet as well. But Gary, go ahead and please give Michelle something of an introduction and put some questions her way.
To be honest, I'd rather Michelle introduce us herself, because this session, this episode, is about being conditioned to conform.
Yes.
And that's a huge subject. I mean, you see the T-shirt? I was known as the T-shirted dean at my university because I would not conform to the usual dress code. And that was an awful long time ago. But we all get conditioned by the people we grow up with, the people we go to school with, our teachers, and most of that conditioning is completely unconscious until it isn't. And I think that's the kind of conversation we're going to have during this next 40 minutes or so. So, Michelle, could you just introduce yourself, a little bit of background, and how you came to this idea of particularly girls being conditioned, but also especially neurodivergent girls and women. So I'm going to zip it.
Okay.
Me too.
Right. So, yes, I am a psychologist by trade, if it's a trade, organizational, not clinical. And yeah, basically what happened was I went through my entire life feeling just rubbish. I just couldn't do some of the things that other people found really easy, but also I could do some things that people, other than like normal people, could do, like they really struggled to do. I was just like, well, that's just easy. So it wasn't until just before my 42nd birthday when I realized that I had ADHD by meeting somebody in the House of Lords, of all places, who was just talking about her recent diagnosis. And it was like a light bulb. And I went through the whole process to try and get diagnosed. And it got to the point where, here we go, Michelle, here's your certificate of ADHD. And I expected just to be like, sweetness and delight and coming in on a celestial cloud like I just did. And in fact, what happened was absolute rage. I was fuming because my life was significantly more difficult than it needed to be. If I'd had this information sooner, obviously, looking back now with a little, 4 years of hindsight, I mean, I love what my life is. I love all of this stuff, but it took me a long time to kind of go through that grief of out. So one of the things I learned was women and girls aren't necessarily allowed the emotion of anger. So that rage scared me, like really scared me, because I didn't know what to do with it. So like a good girl, I took myself up for therapy and coaching, because that's what we do when we don't understand as women. And I got to a really good point where I could understand what was the Michelle stuff and what was the ADHD stuff, and how to kind of work with that side of the brain. I've since been diagnosed with autism as well, just to, you know, make it things way more fun. But there was this big blob of people pleasing, deferring to authority, avoiding conflict at all costs, trying to be nice, trying to include everybody, putting myself at the bottom of the list, you know, it goes on and on forever. That the ADHD didn't, that wasn't a symptom. And what I realized is that was good girl conditioning. All of the ways that women and girls are trained to behave, to be nice, to kind, to be, you know, sharing, caring, nurturing, and putting ourselves at the bottom of the list. So when I discovered that, do you want me to keep going?
Well, I was going to ask you a question about that. All those things that you described, most people would think, well, they're really nice characteristics to have. And they're likely, until they become almost pathological levels of pleasing and niceness.
Yeah.
When did you notice? Well, probably when you were diagnosed, but you had no inkling beforehand that you were being programmed?
The ironic thing is, the first module, so I've got a degree in psychology and a master's in organizational psychology. On day one of my psychology degree, we talk about conditioning and classical conditioning and all the ways that, you know, Pavlov's dogs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know so many psychologists have been diagnosed late in life with these, you know, with neurodivergent, you know, boxes that we put ourselves in, because that's what the medical model says, but that's an entirely different conversation.
Can we do that next time? You're coming back. Please come back to do that one.
3 minutes.
You're booked again for that one.
Yeah. But so the amount of us girls, so neurodiversity, you know, ADHD, you're stereotypical naughty boy in a classroom. So it's like everybody can see it. Whereas for women, and, you know, quite a lot of men as well, that ADHD is not external, it's more internal. And just that sense of being like wanting to understand about ourselves, it's not a surprise that so many of us have gone into the helping professions, because it's that kind of wounded healer thing. It's like, I need to figure myself out, so obviously I go down the psychology route.
I've been thinking quite a lot about that aspect of it, that early aspect of kids who are trying to understand themselves, but the world doesn't let them understand themselves, so it becomes secret.
Well, the world doesn't want them. They want children who are obedient, sit still in classrooms, and you know, get A stars or whatever they call them nowadays, because they've just messed all of that up in GCSEs.
Yes, indeed.
It's like all numbers and it's all upside down. It's very confusing.
So for full transparency, I asked you for to help us out with questions, because with some things will be on the hoof, and you asked me to ask you, which I thought was a brilliant question, what were some of the earliest scripts you internalized, and when did you start to realize they weren't yours? So maybe you could tell the audience a bit about internal scripts, what they are, and then answer your own question.
That's brilliant.
I know. So I go back to kind of one of my early childhood memories. So we grew up, my dad was in the army, which explains my weird accent that travels around the world in every conversation.
I was trying to place it. I was getting a bit of Welsh for some reason.
I've been to Wales once, but yes.
Wow. Okay,
yeah. My best friend when I was kind of 9 was Welsh, so I did have a Welsh accent for a bit, because army children tend to just randomly pick up people's accents. Anyway, grew up in Northern Ireland most of the time. All my primary education was done over there during the Troubles, because that was, an extra level of fun. But again, another conversation. And we lived next door, well, down the road from a reservoir, and I couldn't bring myself to say the word damn, because damn was a naughty word. I was literally, I called it the DAM. So could we go for a bike ride round the DAM, because it was, it just felt so bad. And the different expectations that teachers had on girls and boys in school as well. So we would be sit next to the more lively boys as quite quiet girls, and expected, from the age of 5, 6, 7 to babysit. So help the teachers out by by babysitting the naughty kids in the class. Anyway, so that's all of those scripts about being helpful, put everybody before yourself, be quiet. Every single report.
Were you a diplomat as a kid?
Yeah. I just wanted everybody to be friends with everybody, and everybody to be nice to everybody, and bring everybody in, and and it got to a point where I didn't even know who I was, what I wanted, what I needed. So one of the first questions is like, oh yes, you have ADHD, Michelle. What do you need in the workplace? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know, because I've spent my entire life putting everybody else before me.
Yeah.
And you'd been your own occupational therapist, making secret adaptations, private adaptations to that situation. Wow.
Yeah. But also keeping myself so distracted that I didn't have to think about things as well.
Yeah.
How much is that your ADHD and autism, and how much is that the lot of a woman and a girl?
So
is one compounding the other?
I think so. So my lovely psychiatrist, who also has ADHD and autism, he basically completely ruined everything for me when he said, Michelle, as a very young child, you learned that being funny was a good way of getting people to like you. So my entire personality is autism, turns out. But no, I think, when you have the how to deal with the world, you've that kind of fear-based, I don't understand what's going on. You've got fight, flight, freeze, but you've also got fawn. So somebody says something that's inappropriate, you get offended by it, but you still laugh. Yeah. Somebody does something inappropriate, you play along. And that's that like extreme levels of people pleasing.
Yeah.
That is, it's harmful. Harmful in all of the ways. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when we're doing the podcast, the pleaser in my head's going, are we doing a good job? Could we do something better than this? Have we really hit the mark with that? And I'm having to manage them, go, it's okay, we're doing our best. And that's like constant, every minute of every day that I'm awake.
Do you want a book recommendation for that?
That's my pick.
Yes, we do.
So I literally just recommended today. So Brené Brown wrote a beautiful book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And that helped me so much, because that perfectionism trait clearly was, had to be the most perfect people pleaser, of course. And that book really helped me realize that, to be human is to be a bit of a mess, and that is fine. And
because this world, this life, this universe is totally ridiculous and unlikely. So why would we be perfect at it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we're talking about positive echoes, but we sometimes have to dig quite deep before we can come out the other end. And it seems to me, having read your book, Good Girl Deprogramming, one of the aspects of it is pretty toxic gaslighting of women. And it's like a societal male, not always male, but male gaslighting of people, women especially, neurodivergence. Is that because women are brought up very early to accede to the male dominance and, in fact, the anger and violence that comes with it, and their role is to feel guilt and shame?
Ooh, that is a good question. I'm going to answer it in a way that you look at little girls' clothes, you look at little boys' clothes. Little girls' clothes will have bunny rabbits on and chicks and lambs and kittens. Little boys' clothes will have dinosaurs and lions and bears. It's like we are groomed literally from birth to be prey animals. Whereas, you know, little boys are groomed to be predator animals, which is, you know, which is horrifying, really, let's face it. So there's that kind of level of just slow, insidious drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
And you know, the dominant system that we're living in is a patriarchal system where most people that have the power are most likely to be men. And the funny thing about it is we all, men, women, children, society, media, we uphold that. And just like crabs, you know, if one of us tries to leave the bucket, you know, the crabs will pull us all back, try and keep us back in the bucket of like whatever this is. And we're all harmed by it.
Yeah. So that's about as deep as we're going to get, I think. Because we're shifting, if we're not careful, into the world of toxic masculinity and so on.
See,
what I'd
I
rather
don't think
do
masculinity is inherently toxic.
It isn't. No.
But it's the media that just keeps hammering these messages.
Well, it sells minutes, doesn't it? And it sells, in the old days, newspapers. Shock.
And it belongs in the bucket, doesn't it? I mean, there is a bucket for sure, and something's happening at the moment. Like it might be rusty, and there are holes appearing in the bucket, or there are people like you, Michelle and Gary, who have managed to find some kind of way to abseil out of the bucket or push it over. Something's happening to the bucket, isn't it? And the bucket doesn't seem quite as the prison it once was. And that's not to undermine anyone's experience or lessen how much work there might be to do still. But I do think the bucket is changing. We're in a bucket threatening scenario currently, notwithstanding anything that's been said or any difficulties people are going through, which people like yourself, Michelle, I think are responsible for destabilizing in a very good way.
Well, I keep saying my coach is very witchy, and she keeps saying that, you know, some of the world events that are happening now are patriarchy's last stand.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just look at our friends across the pond, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But that is the last gasp of patriarchy. As much as they're trying to pull us over, we're just resisting. We're just like, nope, we're getting out of that bucket. The bucket's just ridiculous. It harms everybody. Why do we even care?
Yeah, and I love how you picked up on the toxic masculinity, because there is a kind of appropriate masculinity as well, which at the same time might stand a chance of re-emerging in these times, right? I'd love to hear more about that, but I think I might have stemmed your flow a little bit there, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say, we know what the pressures are on girls and women. I'm more aware of it because I have a family who have girls mostly. I don't think we've got any boys in the next generation after me, and the one after that. They're all girls. And I'll give you an example of my daughter when she was probably 8. And she's one of those, I've said it before, she's scarily clever, but she's quiet, unassuming, with a pretty sharp sense of humor. At 8 years old, we went into her school and the teacher said, yes, she's really doing well, but she doesn't socialize much. And, you know, you really do need to get her to conform more. She'll be happier if she conforms more. We didn't know anything. I didn't know anything really about autism or ADHD or any other kind of neurodivergence then. But I was absolutely appalled. And it's stuck with me ever since. And she's doing really quite well in life now. She's off with the National Theatre. So at 8 years old, teachers are telling kids to conform. Conform to what?
Oh, there's a good question. Michelle?
Exactly. It's regressive gender stereotypes, you know, that harm everybody. It should listen for the shoulds
and a kind of human stereotype as well, though, right? Because I'm sure that teacher was acting in what they thought was the best possible interest of everybody concerned. You know, it's habitual and traditional, isn't it?
Yeah, just be normal. Stop being weird. Yeah.
And it was a woman, which in hindsight surprised me. But knowing now what I know, she was just as programmed and conditioned as the men were in that school, which was just a normal local state junior school, very good one, you know, great reputation. And it's got me thinking about education a lot, and especially for girls. And I don't know about you, if you remember the experiment of girls and boys that were asked to do a maths test. And they're probably 14, 15 years old. And they split them into 4 groups. One each group of boys and girls, they put their own names at the top of the paper. And then in the other group, the boys put a girl's name and the girls put a boy's name. And they did the test. Who came out top?
You tell me.
The girls who wrote a boy's name at the top of their paper. So it tells you there's a gender stereotype threat. That girls underperform because they're girls at science, maths, engineering, and medicine, or they have done in the past. And the same goes for ethnic stereotype threat. Black men do worse at college until you reassure them that it's going to be all okay, and you give them examples of black graduates, and suddenly they get the highest scores of all because they came in underperforming. And so there's conditioning all over the place. What I like to do is maybe move our conversation to, okay, what things can we do about it? We can't do the global thing. None of us are influential enough. And another question you gave me, which I thought was a cracker, was how do you support people who feel angry or grief-stricken when they realize just how much they've adapted to fit in?
That was going to be one of my questions.
Sorry?
That was going to be one of my questions.
It was my question, though.
She's psychic as well as all of this. Right. It's a cracking question, because you described your own experience of that, right, Michelle? You know, like, far from it being a revelation and a freedom and a relief, it's like, what the bloody hell, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you mentioned grief, and there's a grief of the person who you've lost, who you thought you were.
Yeah. And it's it don't even, You don't even know who you are. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you need. And here's me just waltzing in and saying everything you thought and believed. It's just been given you by somebody else. You didn't choose it. So yes, it can be quite confronting.
Yeah.
I was watching, there's a program on British television called Country File, on every Sunday. And there's this thing at the moment that is in farms, rewilding.
Oh, yes.
And I thought, actually, that's what I felt like when I realized I was near a divergent. I have the chance to rewild myself.
Brilliant.
You know, what is the environment inside my head that I should be nurturing? And, you know, I've got quite a few friends now who have been formally diagnosed, and they are going through some really difficult things. And so are their partners, because they're now married to a person that they weren't married to before. And they're not always sure they like the new one.
I know. Yeah.
So this is a profound question then, isn't it? So in that state, it's shock in a way as well, isn't it? The sort of vacuum of shock that it's like it goes quiet in the anticipation of what comes next, perhaps, and the sense of grief, the sense of the unknown and the mystery and anger and all the things that you've talked about. Yeah, Gary's question or your question. How are people best supported in that moment in those times?
So it's so easy to feel like a victim in that position, and so the first thing we do is we name it. These were systems designed, and I haven't mentioned the whole coercive control part of it. So the way that we are conditioned as women and girls, and actually very heartbreakingly, I figured out men and boys too, in slightly tweaked different ways, are through various methods of coercive control. So we can't, you know, it's not our fault. It's the system. It's the way the system has been set up to make sure that there are, you know, men behave this way and women behave this way. When naturally, that's not how we evolved to have these very. If we had evolved to have very strict, you know, gender stereotypes of what a girl and woman looks like and what a boy and man looks like, why do we have to use coercive control to make us conform? So this is an unnatural way of being. So so it's that kind of, we name it, we allow the feelings, because we've spent our entire lives to squish the feelings down, because, you know, we get that women are so emotional nonsense all the time. So we self-shame around that. So we allow the feelings to come out, and literally what Gary said, rewilding, start to notice what we look at. And one of the really good things is to look at what we liked to do when we were children, what made our hearts sing as children, before we listened and internalized all of those messages.
It's like owning it, basically, because that's definitely a message I've got from Gary, and I seem to be getting from you as well. It's like, name it and own it, and then live according to that.
Let it go and shake it off, to use two good songs. Yes.
Yes, for another song coming on, perhaps.
I'm not singing.
You're deprogramming the musical. How about that?
There we go. Next one.
I found that I had an executive coach when I was still an academic, and they were grooming me for kind of managerial stardom. And he said to me, what brings you joy? So I started talking about my research and achievements, let's say. And as I was speaking, I realized that none of that brought me any joy. And he said, okay, well, what does bring you joy? And I had no idea. I could not tell him. within a week of realizing that I was neurodivergent, it all came flooding. I'm just curious, and I just love finding shit out. That's one part of my joy. But I've been conditioned to go, okay, you're a professional scientist, you've got to be serious, you've got to hit that mark. And it wiped joy out of my life, except for odd moments, but I couldn't maintain it. So this idea of conditioning, and I wonder where it comes from. Who's winning because of it? Well, it certainly isn't women. And I'm not so sure it's men. They get maybe, an initial adrenaline rush,
maybe. Yeah.
But it's unsustainable, and you just want more and more. So who's winning? Who or what is keeping this system of programming and conditioning active?
Well, those who stand to benefit, right? Presumably, because that I've got better recently, I think, in attempting to appreciate what might be not right, but what, to understand better what I think is wrong. And presumably the roots of conditioning come from human safety. And it's a good tool in the right place, but a horrible one when used for personal aggrandizement and domination and lots of the things that we now see and associate with coercive control and conditioning. And, we've had a proper belly full of it, haven't we, in the last, as an aspect of the industrial age, if you like, which is now going into the technological age. Yeah. It's been a very important part of that to make it work in a way, isn't it? So that collective safety is almost a sort of permissible defense. But when you get safe and you keep doing it because people see it as a and we all do it, don't we, to some extent? We've all got our own little personal examples of it, some more than others, I'm guessing. Otherwise, we wouldn't know how it worked anyway. And definitely we've all, and many of us, I'm sure, the sort of person who might be interested in watching this program would be on the receiving end of it and know exactly what that's like. So its root, I suspect, is in, I mean, you know this better than me, Michelle, from a human psychology point of view, it is protective, isn't it, to norm and form and conform. But there's a line over which we've probably gone way too far. Process. Yeah.
Look at all of our institutions. So school is like it's like how we know how children develop through play and learn through play, all of that stuff. School is like sit down.
Yeah, the opposite.
In this seat for however many hours, 6 hours a day, and write and follow all of these instructions and don't make any noise and behave. And it's like that is bonkers. And then we go into the workplace and like, if we know what human people, same word, what they need generally, what in terms of like, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we know so much of the stuff that we do in workplace. Right, okay. This is my funny story. University twice. And I came out of university with a beautiful idea of how organizations should work in terms of effectiveness and performance and, well-being and health and profitability, all of this stuff. And I walked into the world of work as a naive 21-year-old and was like, what the actual hell is this? Because we've known for decades how to get the best out of people, but we don't.
Yeah.
So I was just absolutely astounded. And I honestly thought it was me. I was like, oh, well, is it just me? This is not working.
Well, from all you've told us, you'd be likely blame yourself, wouldn't you? So as not to cause a fuss.
But it's me. It's like, I can't fit in. I can't sit still in a noisy office and concentrate on a computer without talking to anyone for days at a time.
Yes, The modern
with
workplace.
lights and heat and cold and noisiness and smelly photocopiers and people doing things. I was not built for the workplace.
Same here.
Open plan office.
Yeah.
And
then you get the thing of the meetings. You get to a certain level, and I would watch 30 or 40 people with usually a male who's chair. And it's that old trope of the woman will come up with a great idea and the room will go silent. And then at the next meeting, a man would say the same thing and go, "Oh, what a fantastic idea." And the woman would keep quiet.
And all the other women and all the other men that then celebrated the guy would also keep quiet.
Yes.
Sometimes though, with my ADHD, I couldn't keep quiet. I used to get into trouble all the time for saying that's a spade, effectively. So I was always hauled into talks. Yes.
For being disruptive. So can I ask how it's going then? And first of all, thank goodness that you are affecting the world with Good Girl Deprogramming. It's great to hear that as a father of daughters. And it just seems like a cracking idea generally. And I sympathize greatly with the conditions you've described, school and work, and have a great empathy and, and sympathy for this anger of realizing, that phrase, "Is it me?" It's like, well, no, actually, and it's taken a bloody too long to find out it wasn't you in the first place. How's it going? Presumably a lot of, I would suspect from this interview, our conversation, and people experiencing you for the first time, some will be like, "Oh my God, that is me." And there is that moment of realization must be pinging all over the world when people hear you on a podcast or see your book or whatever, see the book cover in a bookshop. So hold on, there's Good Girl Deprogramming. It's like ding, 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 all around the world. I suspect people are thinking that is me, and who knows what they might be 70 or 80, mightn't they, and have that realization. This could happen at any time in your life. How do you think generally, I know it's a difficult question, but how do you think generally it's going? I mean, presumably there's a lot of receptivity or greater receptivity to what you're saying. How do you think it's going for you at the moment?
So it's really interesting. I was panicking when this was coming out because I had to get it out because this is information I knew that I needed to share with the world. So it's that kind of compulsion that had to come out. And I was terrified that psychologists in particular, there's a lot of policing in psychology.
Every academic.
From an academic point of view,
just generally, it's like, because a lot of it is like I'm taking two concepts and merging them together, and nobody's done that specific thing before, but it doesn't mean it's not like researched, But I was terrified that psychologists would hate me and I'd be dragged in front of the British Psychological Society and like told off for swearing on the internet. And what's really beautiful that so many psychologists absolutely love it.
Great.
And I've had one really bad review on Amazon, which was hilarious because you are able to read the first 20 or so pages of the book, and if you think the writing is so horrendous, why did you buy it anyway? But no, not that I have any of that rejection sensitivity. I got a really good LinkedIn post out of that one. I had loads of views on that one. Yeah. But it's going really well, and I just love seeing people's eyes light up and just go, it's
like two neurons suddenly do this and you go, ping, got it.
Yes. Yeah, just seeing the little pennies drop and the lights up, and then a lot of people, it's like just knowing that this is a thing can help them start to unpick other things.
And therein is a classical example, if you don't mind me saying, of the neurodivergent helicopter view of the world, where you see 25 different things below you and you go, out of those, these 2 or 3 are actually connected and nobody else has connected them before. And then it takes hard work to get it accepted, because all those academics, I was one, They've got their own egos, and their ego is built on what their little bit of the science is. And they'll defend it to the hilt as being the thing until you go, well, it's one thing, but there are 15 other things out here.
Yeah.
Get that man out of here. Yes,
yeah.
Well, Gina's appreciating you here, Michelle. This is great. What don't you do? Well, every 2 weeks I have a fantastic conversation, and this is one of them with Gary here. I'm so delighted has introduced me to Michelle. I love this. Good on you, Michelle. Don't listen to the haters.
I've only been born. I've been able to cope. It's fine.
Well, it's just practice, isn't it?
Yeah. I was expecting a lot more. I had prepared myself, by reading all of the books that I love, all of the negative reviews, and just thinking, well, that's all nonsense. So I'd kind of gone through that, inoculation against rejection. So.
And it must be hard to be conditioned to be nice and receptive and not make a fuss to get a bad review. I mean, that just it goes. It just feeds straight into that, doesn't it? It was
that kind of it was like the whole sort of the Kubler-Ross grief thing of like, what it was like devastation was like it's like almost like 5 seconds of like weirdness, devastation, anger, like a bit of grief, and then some denials, like what is wrong with this person. But then I thought it was really amusing, because that's, if I'm not your person, you can check if I'm your person. I'm on the internet. You can tell whether you're going to resonate with me or not before you buy the bloody book. So
yes. Well, what I can say about your book and about you is, and the reason you're on this podcast is, you leave people with a positive feel. Yeah, there's a lot of crap that's gone on in people's lives, and it still is. But here are some tools that, if you are self-aware and you look at your life in real time, there's things you can do about it. You can't go back and relive your life, but how do you live this next bit, the rewilding bit? So when you talk to people, how do you get them to do the next step? They've realized they're conditioned. What do they do?
Little experiments. So, you don't need to necessarily, it's like baby steps. Your brain is wired in such a way that you habitually say yes, you habitually put everybody before yourself. So it's almost like trying to break those habits by just doing small things and, proving to yourself that what if experiment. What if I decided to stop wearing heels when heels was expected for me at work? It's like, I started wearing flats. Nobody died. Excellent. So then the next thing is like, I can stop hedging all of my emails with, I'm really sorry to bother you. I hope that's okay with you. And, I'm sorry to bother you, but you said you'd have this done, but I just want a little nudge and chase. All of that. Just write emails like men.
Yeah.
Where's the report?
Well, it's true. And
see what happens.
Yeah.
The thing about that is, you know yourself, Michelle, we love clarity. If you hide stuff behind vagueness, I'm doomed. So I'll make it up. And what you get is good luck to you. But if you give me clarity of what you would like to have happen, you'll get 100%. And I wonder whether there's a certain element of that with the way we treat kids. We kind of expect them to learn by osmosis. Well, why not be clear about things? Yes, you will have strange ideas, strange thoughts growing up. You'll be misunderstood. You'll feel sad. And these are the ways you can help yourself. And that's, again, what I got from towards the end of your book, which is about real world experiments. But non-judgmental.
No.
Because if you start judging yourself again.
What's really interesting? So I've spent my life rescuing. So I was like rescue extraordinaire. If I wasn't people pleasing, I was people rescuing. And I did not want to take your good girl or your model man conditioning and replace it with, this is Michelle's way of living your life, so I'm going to give you my conditioning. So in the book, it's more, and in my work, it's more, this is what I did. It might not work for you. You need to figure out what works for you. So asking questions, you know, here's some models, here's some strategies, you know, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Experiment, see what works, try some stuff on. You might not like it.
The word invitation is going through my head.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again. Invitation.
Yeah, invitations.
Yes. And you've mentioned this before, Gary. I think it's in your book as well, isn't it? About experiments, doing little experiments to see what happens.
Well-meaning experiments.
Yeah, and that's the deprogramming you're speaking of, as far as I can see, Michelle. You know, we live practically, don't we? We do stuff. We have to do stuff. That's the sort of nature of this existence. And then you can inform what that stuff is. Is it a reinforcement of something that's dysfunctional and hurting you, or is it something new from which you can learn? And the beautiful thing about that is, I think it would appear, wouldn't it, that to become deprogrammed takes the same sort of time it took to get programmed. And I don't think that's true.
Not as much, but does it? It's not. You're not gonna. It's not going to be a weekend.
No, that's really important for people to know. It's not going to be because you know when I was younger and I was reading self-help books, I just thought by the time I finished this self-help book, the whole thing would be done. But it does take years of implementation. But and it is okay. But it's also good to note that it doesn't take the same time necessarily if it's coming from a conscious point of view. And this came up, Gary, you know, when you came to speak in San Martino, in my town, and the NLP lady was there who said, we live most of our lives 97% unconscious. She said something like that, you know, the statistic, the recognized statistic that most people are just living a programmed life from the moment they get up to the moment they go back to sleep again. It's pretty much on autopilot. Yet when you hack that with these experiments you're talking about from a conscious point of view, I think the impact is much greater and quicker. And if it's not, it's still more enlivening and beautiful and inspiring than running on those tracks. I just, there's something about being in the 3%, which is the sort of offer your book can give to people. It's like a wake up, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, yes, I was. Yes, that did happen to me. Yes, society is like that. Jesus, now what? And then, you know, the shock and the upset, and then the experiments can begin, can't they? In a really alive, dynamic and beautiful way.
Yeah. Some of my experiments are mischievous though, so they're not necessarily for the benefit of mankind. Yeah. Some of it's like,
you can't tell us about those, presumably.
Oh, just my favorite one, and my partner's like, stop it. So we are conditioned to walk down the street and get out of the way of men. We subconsciously move out of the way of men. Wow. So sometimes I just walk like a man, just barrel through and watch almost like the alarm on a man's face that he's going to have to move out of the way of me. So swimming pools as well, I do it then. But James is like, I know what you're up to.
Yeah, stop it.
But it's well, there you go. Interesting. It's again, it's subconscious. We just move out of the way.
Yeah, and having that transcendent view, it's proper science, isn't it? You are observing what goes on in these little experiments, which Jean really likes the idea of. Gary, I know it's important for us to include, isn't it, a little bit of inspiration that's come from something that's been spotted during the week. We probably only need like a sort of 5 minutes at the end for that, but I want to make sure you've said everything you want to say, Michelle, and share with us. And thank you so much for being here on our Positive Echo podcast. And we would like to get you back for the bits that this is not a conversation for this particular episode, but there are maybe 2 or 3 others in due course. Is there any vital information? Because we have made reference to these times, haven't we? Things are changing. The bucket is kind of breaking, or something's going on with the bucket. It's being torn in all sorts of different directions. You mentioned like a witchy life coach, and something's in the air, isn't it? Whilst things are breaking down and whilst pressure's being put on, there's a really interesting, I think this is the chaos time. It really occurs to me that we've gone from COVID to chaos. We had the COVID 5 years. It's switching to something now into the chaos time, and out of chaos, what is it? Nietzsche is, from chaos is born a dancing star or whatever. That's probably a terrible misrepresentation, but what can come? What are you hoping for? What's the future going to look like if all goes according to plan?
So if we look at, I'm not going to give you a history lesson here, but there is a march to the dark side here as well that we're grappling with, as well as the Spanish flu happened, and look what happened after that. So
yes.
We have to be, have to consciously choose to follow going down the Star Wars route, or start to our finish. We have to follow the light side. We have to follow that path and reject the blaming other people. We need to take personal responsibility for ourselves and our own lives. We need to wake up and do the work. We can't just go, oh, it's shit here, I'm going to blame all of those people, because that's not real. That's society trying to force us down a path that's not good.
Yeah, come on, we can do better than that.
And that's why we do the positive echo.
Yeah,
it's not about being nice. It's not even just about being generous. It's about being the antidote to the dark side.
Yeah,
it's the human glue. And the more we notice it, the better the antidote. And we'll keep doing it until, unless it either works or we can't keep doing it.
Yeah.
I feel obliged to represent the quote correctly. I wasn't too far off. Look, you must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. There you go. To all the dance.
I love that.
It's lovely, isn't it? From
apparently, also he was one of the people that uses M dashes in his writing. Seems to be at the moment the signature for AI. No, it's not.
No, so, I've got M dashes, and my book was done before AI was invented. Well, it wasn't invented, Yes.
I think this is ironic here, comical. It's the government's fault, all of it. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Actually, that is not the note we're ending on. Something beautiful has come. Thank you, Michelle, and please do come back.
Thank you.
You've got a little bit of inspiration for us here. I mean, we've had quite a lot of awe so far. Can we squeeze in a little bit more awe?
Yeah. Well, you know how at the end of every podcast, I try and showcase a little bit of news that I just made me tingle a bit. And I'd never come across the science of awe before. That is AWE. And this is a really interesting website as well. It's the Good News Post. And nature, music, and witnessing kindness boosts well-being. And this is the new science of awe. So, for example, it's one of the work from one of the world's leading emotion scientists. Whether it's the beauty of nature, the kindness of a stranger, or the magic of a shared moment with others, awe is all around us, and science shows it can profoundly improve your mental and physical health. So, for example, examples of awe: nature, the beauty of the outdoors, sunsets, starlit skies. Often do we actually stop and pay attention, and not just look, but notice how we feel physically because we're looking at something. Music. If I listen to certain pieces of classical music, I'm not a classical geek, but I get goosebumps because it goes really, really deep to who we are as humans. Moral beauty, the witnessing of acts of kindness or courage. It always makes us feel better, makes us feel stronger. And I love this one: collective effervescence. Feeling connected with others at concerts, sports events, or even a community walk. So I leave viewers and the two of you with the idea of paying attention in the moment, non-judgmentally, and looking for awe. And how does it make us feel physically? How do we react to it emotionally? And last of all, what does it make us think? Because normally our thinking minds dominate everything. Go body first, then your emotions, and finally thoughts. Because they'll be really good, clean, wise thoughts.
It sounds like mission possible. This podcast will self-destruct in 30 seconds, and that is your mission, should you wish to accept it. Mission very possible. And last word to you. Oh, actually, before we go there, because we've got a couple of comments. Without chaos, we don't get out of our comfort zone in order to create change. Maybe there's a massive collective version of that going on. Oh, yes, Gary, wonderful. Like Passaggiotta in Italy, we must be present in nature. Love this. Thank you from Gina. Thanks for joining us, Gina, and everyone else, JMC, who was here as well. Last word to you, our dear guest, our esteemed and excellent guest this evening. Thank you, Gary, for introducing me to Michelle and everybody else here.
I know I was right.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably got a tingle. You probably got a sense of awe, and the invitation had Michelle join us. What would you like to say in conclusion, Michelle?
This is like, just don't be normal. Just
don't be normal.
Don't be normal. Just again, that all thing's amazing. I ran the Newcastle Happy Cafe for years. So
that was
yes, there is so much wisdom that we have been told that is not true. So yes. Don't be normal. Be weird. Be curious. Go and explore.
Excellent. Do those experiments. Would you like to be wafted out on some of that celestial dust again? Thanks for the giggle, Michelle. Don't be normal. This is my new mantra. from the United States there. So here we go. We're going to go out on a lovely a celestial cloud here. Michelle, thank you. Thanks, Gary. And we'll see you again next time. Ciao, ciao. There we go.